You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
Sarah and Trudy sitting in for Aaron and Natasha today, and we are joined now by James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette. Good afternoon, James.
Hello.
So, you are looking at an announcement out of Ottawa, quite a lot of money to hire a lot of people to deal with natural catastrophes.
And business is booming. You know, if you talk about a funny coincidence, because normally, you know, this is the kind of thing that would just pass under the radar. Okay, $82 million over 3 years. It's going to go to the Red Cross, Salvation Army, groups like that. But, you know, it's kind of funny because like you guys, I began my day under a cloud of rain. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to last forever. But no, it's gone by the afternoon. Meanwhile, the St. Francois rivers and the Montmorency River, Sherbrooke and Quebec City are like the flume ride at La Ronde. They are evacuating houses because of this. I forget if I saw it in French. It's like, I forget, they call it the rain highway. Is some glitch, a high altitude glitch. So this rain just comes pelting down. And you guys, you have to admit, this past summer, it's almost Old Testament in the number of various plagues and disasters that have been occurring. We've had wildfires, we have had windstorms, we have had, even earlier in the year, we had freezing rain, hydro systems down, hydro systems up. And you really have to ask yourself whether this announcement, this otherwise rather routine announcement of $82 million from the feds, is a harbinger of what we can expect to see more of, or perhaps hope to see more of in Quebec. Because right now there's a snit going on between Premier Legault and the province's mayors. The province's mayors are saying that $1 billion that you have budgeted for us to deal with, to be proactive and improve our infrastructures to deal with the fallout of extreme weather. And if you want climate change, it's not going to be enough. And Legault's going, well, you guys haven't even spent, you know, what you have. So what are you coming after me for? Fact is that the big glaring blind spot in this whole story is, yes, we have a Ministry of Public Security and we have civil protection, but we don't really have, and all the bureaucracies, the galaxies of bureaucracies that we have here in Quebec, I don't seem to think there is someone who has been designated to say, let's take a look at all the infrastructure we have, certainly at the municipal level, and see what's vulnerable to extreme weather. See, for example, when the fire department in Quebec City this morning says, if you see a section of the riverbank breaking away, don't go near it. I think the whole section of the riverbank breaking away might necessitate an inspection by, you know, surveyors and people who are a lot smarter about that than us, and perhaps some changes have to be made along those lines. But this is no longer a matter of saying, well, you know, you live in a flood zone. Yeah, we know the Montmorency, you know, will go up, and even the St. Francois River, it runs right through the middle of downtown Sherbrooke, for crying out loud. But the fact is, this is not really the flooding season. That's the spring. And now we're seeing it smack, you know, in the middle of summer, almost midway through July. Things are not the same anymore, and it seems to me there is a big blind spot, certainly in Quebec, and indeed the rest of the country's approach to dealing with, how can I put it, extraordinary weather events that are no longer extraordinary.
Well, I think, yeah, you're right. Times they are a-changing, and the next plague of locusts is just around the corner, and how can we be proactive?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, Trudy, the thing is, you know, back in the day we'd say, okay, yeah, it's locust season, stop freaking out, you know. But now locust season can be any time. Flooding season can be any time. These heat waves, which, okay, it's summer, it gets hot, I understand that. But we're seeing the same cycle that we remember back in '89 when Kerry got turned into a Venetian canal.
Oh yes.
It's like, oh, that's an anomaly. That's not. That stuff is happening all the time. Thank goodness the Kerry is not getting flooded, but we're still seeing underpasses go under. We're still seeing that cycle where it gets stinking hot, ridiculously hot. And people start wondering about how many, long-term care centers actually have air conditioning. And then it's usually followed by, a brutal thunderstorm, which locally will do some damage, wind, whatever, hail. But this is not extraordinary stuff anymore. This is normal. And as far as I can tell, I have not seen any even fundamental changes into the way municipalities are planning or protecting themselves against what is no longer a 1 in 100 long shot event, but rather one that will very likely happen next week.
Well, speaking of government money going into government programs, healthcare, provincial level, what's the latest on that, James?
Well, here's the thing, Trudy. As I've mentioned repeatedly on this show, no matter whether it's Quebec identity, whether it's language, indeed healthcare, Francois Legault's modus operandi is very, very simple. First thing you do is you have to create a boogeyman. You have to create a scarecrow that you can brandish in front of your supporters and say, it's not my fault. It's the fault of, insert group name here. And what he's been doing with healthcare reform, so-called healthcare reform, is he's setting up the healthcare unions to be the villains in this. He's already, about last month, early in June, I think, he began spouting off, we can't keep the status quo, things have to change, but I've got to have the cooperation of the unions, which is kind of interesting because certainly when it comes to contract negotiations, the government has not been tripping over itself to reach a settlement. And the unions have made it clear that these are our demands, but they're not even having negotiating sessions to discuss that. But today, here's Francois Legault. He's in Winnipeg. He's meeting with the rest of the premiers for the lovely name Council of the Federation, and they're talking about healthcare. How do we spend this healthcare money, so on and so forth. Although Quebec is not a part of this deal because Quebec is self-declared a special jurisdiction. We don't have to be a part of this deal. So he decides to take this to social media, and he says, listen, I had a working breakfast with my colleague premiers and the head of the Fédération interprofessionnelle de la santé du Québec, which is, I think, the province's largest nursing union. And, we want to change things, but we have got to have nurses. We've got to have them there weekends, nights, whenever we need them. We have got to have them. It's going to be up to the unions. I mean, he's just painting this portrait that if this thing falls flat, if this government falls flat on its face, it's not going to be our fault. It's going to be the fault of the unions. At which point, the president of the union, who is no slouch in these things, basically shot back and said, "We're there all the time. We are ready to work and be present." But remember, this is the same government which in 2019. Then healthcare minister Danielle McCann. I won't say she lied, but she certainly misstated the situation when she said to a meeting of this union, of the FEEC, saying, this is the last year you will ever have to work mandatory overtime. She was cheered to the echo, and we all know how well that went out. Nothing has changed in our healthcare system. Nothing has changed in the Russian roulette system of our ERs. And God knows, CJAD had this great story yesterday about that poor fellow who had to end up getting treated in Kingston for a burst appendix after waiting, more than 12 hours at the Vic. That's not normal. And the fact that, the suggestion, this health reform is going to change everything. No, it isn't. It's going to take a fundamental rethinking of not just how unions, and yes, unions do have a role to play, but the absolute layers of bureaucracy that have been strangling healthcare in this province for half a century has got to be blown up. And I guarantee you that Christian Dubé, health minister, nor yet Francois Legault have the political courage or the will to blow that up, because who knows what the fallout's going to be. But this idea of centralizing, decentralizing, it's just a mug's game. It's a stall. So believe me when I tell you, this is not the last time you'll be hearing Francois Legault suggesting that if everything fails, the unions are to blame.
James, I'm just realizing that the Premier is speaking live from Winnipeg, where that council at the Federation is undergoing. So I don't know his travel plans, if he woke up in Winnipeg or left early today. Wondering if he saw the cover of the Journal de Montreal with two very worn-out-looking nurses at Santa Cabrini Hospital working 44 hours.
The 40-hour weekend?
44 hours in just 3 days. Because I feel like if he saw that, he may not be so quick to say, nurses, we need you, all hands on deck.
Well, I mean, but the headline on that story is the one that really people should be paying attention to, because those nurses are saying it's only a matter of time until we lose a patient.
Ouch. James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette. You'll be back tomorrow after 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us.
At the